Welcome to the second episode of Dead on Arrival. I'm James Blair, and this is Rylan. He'll be our host today, and we'll be talking about the YF-23 and the AH-56 Cheyenne. The AH-56 was meant to be a ground attack helicopter, meaning it would assist infantry in pushing forward and take out heavier targets that infantry might have trouble dealing with, and it'd also be able to scout.
The Northrop Grumman YF-23 was created under the ATF competition, which would have multiple companies participating, like Grumman and Rockwell, for example. It competed against the YF-22, which was built by Lockheed Martin. 7 designs were originally submitted, as I was saying, with the companies. Only 2 were chosen for further engineering, being Northrop Grumman and Lockheed. Boeing General Dynamics teamed with Northrop, while McDonnell Douglas teamed with Lockheed. What makes the YF-23 mainly stand out is its appearance, being it having V-shaped ailerons, and this would help reduce its radar cross-section, allowing it to be more stealth. It would have internal weapons bay, meaning that the missiles would be stored inside the aircraft, and it would have an angled structure to also absorb radar signatures, and stealth coating to reduce its radar return. 2D thrust vectoring, which essentially is where the engines redirect the thrust of the engine, would allow it to be more maneuverable, as well as fly-by-wire systems, which is where the control surfaces are electrically linked up and controlled by a flight computer rather than mechanically linked. The YF-23 would end up being faster, stealthier, and have a longer range than the F-22, but the F-22 was more maneuverable. The canopy had to be thin enough for the pilot to have clear vision, but strong enough to withstand a bird strike at 400 knots, or 460 miles per hour. They tested the canopy, actually, by shooting chickens at it, so that's a little funny thing there. And pilots would test the controls in the simulator. They would end up crashing 25 times before they could actually perfect it. The aircraft was always tested at night, and engineers would work in large buildings with no windows for up to 15 hours at a time. It lost to the F-22, unfortunately, though. The reasons it had slightly less maneuverability, and another major reason was Lockheed Martin was a much more trusted production and infrastructure, and as well as being perceived as a safer and more completed program. Now, on next to James with the H-56.
The H-56 was part of the AAFSS program. Development began in 1964, and it took its first flight in 1967. It actually had 3 props. It had the standard, the big prop, and then the counter torque prop, because when the blades spin, it doesn't just want to spin the blades, it also wants to spin the helicopter in the opposite direction. So you have the anti-torque rotor to prevent that. And then it actually had a pusher prop so that it could reach speeds of up to 212 knots, which is extremely fast for a helicopter. It had 6 hardpoints, and it could carry rockets, tow missiles, gun pods, and other things. It had a 7.62 minigun, and then it could also carry either a 30mm cannon or a 40mm grenade launcher under the belly, while the minigun was on the nose and could swivel around. Its main competitor was the AH-1. Bell just kind of designed it out of nowhere. There's no program. They just kind of dropped it, and the Army liked it a lot because they needed something that could come into service quickly, because the Vietnam War was starting to get pretty dirty. So they could start producing them in, I think, 1967, and it would take the H-56 until the 70s to start going into production. Some neat things about the H-56 is that the gunner actually has sight connected to the chair so that it could look where the gun was looking, or where the targeting system, which would have a laser on it, so that the missiles could track properly. The pilot would actually have a helmet-mounted cueing system, which would allow him to mark targets and slew the turret on his own just by looking at a certain point, which I think is extremely advanced for being in the mid-60s. What else? Testing it would have some accidents, such as the death of David A. Bale. He was trying to test oscillations in the helicopter to see how much it could take, when unfortunately there was a rotor strike, resulting in the helicopter crashing and unfortunately killing him. During the testing, one of the TOW missiles failed in front of one of the Senate Armed Service Committees, so it looked really bad. And also, even though it had over 100 successful launches beforehand, so it's just probably the missile's fault and not actually the helicopter. And it unfortunately it'd be canceled on August 9th, 1972, due to it exceeding the gross weight limit, inadequate night and all weather capabilities, and being rather expensive.
So you talked about the helmet-mounted targeting system. How do you think that's influenced modern air combat today?
Well, so in the Apache, they still have that. They've expanded upon it and added night vision and thermal capabilities built into it instead of just being a simple monocle that you would look at and slew the target. Another thing was that it could actually store target points on the fly, which was really advanced because like most of the time you would store waypoints and target information on the ground and then go do the strike. But with this, they could scout out targets and then mark them down and make combat operations much more fluid and not having to like write down coordinates, go back to base, and get the ground crew to import them into your helicopter. What's like some besides the maneuverability and the safety of going with the Lockheed design? Do you think there are any like main design flaws with the YF-23 that caused it to lose to the YF-22?
The YF-23 didn't necessarily have any design flaws, I would say, but the main reason was that just Lockheed Martin's infrastructure and its ability to produce things was just went back further, was more trusted, and overall it was just seemed like a safer pick for Lockheed.
I agree. I also think generally the YF-23 design should have won. Also, it's just such a unique design. Like I haven't seen many planes that have that outline to it. How do you think this competition has affected modern combat?
I think it drove America to have a more strategic shift on stealth aircraft. Examples being like the F-35
Mhm.
and greater focus on stealth in general. With while like recently we've seen like a little bit less of a shift towards stealth, especially in like low action areas, with like the F-15EX being developed and all that stuff like that. Stealth has basically become the big deal for now around the world with like the Su-57 and I believe China developing some as well.
I think stealth is definitely important, but today I think we're seeing more low-cost anti-drone things being developed, such as jammers or laser-guided rockets, which are cheap or about as expensive as Shahed drones, which are just suicide drones that are just launched and they just follow and attack a point. I do think stealth is definitely important, and the YF-23 definitely influenced it. But I think it being so expensive kind of limits what it would have been able to do in the modern day. So maybe it was not meant to be.
I agree.
Thank you for listening to our second episode of Dead on Arrival. Our next episode will be about the pop culture influence of aviation.